Religion, gods and goddesses. Now, most people in the ancient world were very religious. In Egypt, Rome, Greece, they were very religious. And that's what we'll be looking at today, the religion of the ancient Spartans. You can see this group of gods, the pantheon of the gods. You've got Zeus and various other gods that the Greeks believed in. So we'll be studying some of these gods today and some of the religious beliefs of the Spartans. The ancient Greeks believed in many different gods, and they were like humans. They had the face of a human, the body of a human. Egypt was a bit different. They believed in gods that had the face of an animal and a body of a human. The Greeks believed in many different gods, but they were human-type gods with human emotions and human looks. This belief is called polytheism. So if you believe in many different gods, that's polytheism. If you believe in only one god, that is called monotheism. Muslims, Christians and Jews all believe in one god. So that is belief in monotheism. They all believe in monotheism. But the ancient people, especially the Greeks, Romans, Egyptians, they believed in many gods, polytheism. That's what they believed. They believed in male and female gods, and the Greeks had temples, gods and sacrifices in common. So around ancient Greece, the Athenians, the Spartans and so on, they had similar temples, gods and sacrifices. But the Spartans were a little bit different. They had certain gods they paid more attention to and some gods which they didn't pay so much attention to. But all the gods were male and female, and they had certain relationships. One male god might get married to a female god. They'd have children. Some of the gods are children of other gods. So there was all these sorts of relationships in the ancient Greek religion. And there were some differences between the Spartan interpretation of the religion and their practice of the religion compared to the rest of Greece. Cults and festivals. There were different cults, festivals and rituals celebrated and observed in different city-states. So they're all sort of the same religion, they're all polytheistic, but they had different cults, festivals and rituals in different city-states. The Spartans were noted for their serious attitude to religion, observance of the gods, and that they were quite religious. And if you look at the incident or the big battle, where in 480 BC the 300 Spartans held off the Persian army led by Xerxes, that battle's gone down as one of the most famous battles in history because you had the 300 Spartans massively outnumbered, but they held off the Persian army. Now apparently the story is that the Spartans could have had more than 300 there that day. Right? They could have had more than 300 soldiers. But because of religious reasons, they did not let them come. They left soldiers behind to do something else because of religious reasons. And I find that really amazing and really extraordinary. The Persians were invading Greece. Right? They had at least 50,000 soldiers. Some people say there might have been 250,000 or 300,000. And they were held off at this famous battle, the Battle of Thermopylae, where the 300 Spartans were holding off this massive army. And it's just extraordinary because what the Spartans did is they observed their religion. Even though Greece was facing an invasion, they observed their religion and they held those other soldiers back. And the result of that was you had only 300 Spartans facing the Persian army. And the result of that is that you've had this extraordinary and classic battle which has gone down in history. And 2,400 years later, people are still talking about it. They're making movies about this. The movie, The 300, that's all about this battle. So it's just extraordinary. They practiced their religion and look what happened. They've gone down in history because of that battle. And there's a bit more to the story. I mean, everyone says there was 300 Spartans. There were other soldiers from other parts of Greece. There were other Greeks there. So it wasn't just the 300. There were other Greek soldiers there from other city-states. But it's the 300 Spartans that got all the glory because of that. So anyway, the Spartans were very religious, and in that respect it paid off for them, because that battle went down in history as a very famous battle. Herodotus, who was an ancient Greek historian, he travelled around a lot. He went to Egypt and places like that, very famous historian. He's considered the father of history. He wrote a book called The Histories. You can buy that book today if you want to. It's a very well-known book. Herodotus tells the famous story of Pheidippides, the Athenian runner. And here's an image of what he might have looked like, a magnificent runner. You can see him there, very healthy, very athletic. He told us the famous story of this man. And apparently the story goes that this runner, he was sent to Sparta requesting help for the imminent battle of Marathon. And according to the story, the Spartans were moved by the appeal. But they did not want to help because it was the 9th day of the month. They had to wait until the moon was full. And so that's just another example of how they were so religious and didn't want to do something on because of religious reasons. Now, this is an image of the Dioscuri. So you've got these two young youths, and this is a very famous group of twins from Sparta. Particularly important to the Spartans were the mythical twin Spartan heroes, these Dioscuri. And you can see this image of them. There's a lot of images of them, and they've got the two horses there. They're very famous twins from ancient Sparta. And they're also known as, you could pronounce it as Dioscuri as two words or just one word. And what this means is the youths of Zeus. Remember, Zeus was one of the gods, and he was actually the king of the gods in ancient Greece. So it's interesting, in a lot of ancient societies, they believed in many gods, but there was usually a king of the gods. In Rome, it was Jupiter, or Jupiter, as it might have been pronounced. He was the king of the gods. In Greece, it was Zeus. In Egypt, it was Amun-Ra. So these Dioscuri were the youths of Zeus. And they were called, their individual names were Castor and Polydeuces. So these are the two Dioscuri, Castor and Polydeuces. The Dioscuri were associated with young men, their pursuit of horsemanship, because as you can see in the image, they had horses, they liked horses, and athletics. Also warfare. Other gods of importance in Sparta were Apollo of Amyclae, and he was also the god of light, Artemis Orthia, Athena Chalkikokos, Helen, who comes from the story of Helen and Troy, and Helen of Troy. The ancient writer Homer wrote the story of the Iliad, and he also wrote the Odyssey. And according to this story, there was a great city called Troy, and the Greeks from Mycenae tried to take over it, and they all wanted Helen, who was supposed to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and they worshipped her as a god. There was also Leucipides and Lycurgus. Remember the great lawgiver, the great sort of prophet of Sparta, the great, the man who set the foundations of Sparta. The philosopher of Sparta. He's the one who sort of laid out the rules for Spartan society. He was worshipped as a god as well. The gods were armed. Most of the Spartan gods were armed. Remember, they were so militaristic, so I guess they were trying to instill that in the people, and even the gods were considered to be armed. At Amyclae, there was a statue of Apollo with a spear in one hand and a bow in the other. There was also a statue of an armed Aphrodite, who was a female goddess, but even she was armed. Hephaestus. The Spartans did not worship some of the gods, such as Hephaestus, who were popular in other parts of Greece. Upper-class Spartiates did not do manual labour. Remember, the Spartiates were the top group, and they devoted themselves to the military, so they didn't do manual labour. Therefore, Hephaestus was of little relevance to them because he was the god associated with manual labour and that sort of thing. So they didn't see any point to worship him. It wasn't relevant to them. Apollo was the god of light and the sun, truth and prophecy, healing, and plague. Also music and poetry. And you can see he looks like a magnificent person, doesn't he? He looks like a perfect human. He's well built, athletic, and so on. So he was the god of all these things. And the Apollo space program in the 1960s, when they put a man on the moon, was named after him. And he was also the god of other things as well. So he was an amazing individual. He was a god of many things and very impressive to the people. He was beardless, athletic, and young. He was said to be the son of Zeus and Leto, so he was the son of the king of the gods. He had a twin sister, Artemis. So it's interesting, these relationships, isn't it? You got these gods, they're related to other gods. It's very human, isn't it? It's like they've got all these human characteristics. They're marrying, they're having children, and so on. Artemis was the god of the hunt, wild animals, the wilderness. You can see there's an animal next to her there, so she's the god of the hunt, wild animals, and so on. So they've got an animal next to her. And she's got some weapons. It looks like a bow and arrow, or she's got some arrows she's carrying on her back. And she was the god of childbirth. Also virginity. She was the daughter of Zeus and Leto, and there is a sanctuary to her located in a natural basin between Limni and the west bank of the Herodotus River. Poseidon, he was the god of the sea. He was also believed to have caused earthquakes. And he was an older male with a beard and curly hair. So you can see he's quite a magnificent individual, an older individual. He's got the curly hair, looks very big and strong, and maybe even a little bit scary. And so he was the god of the sea. That's Poseidon. And they've made movies about this sort of thing and named boats. There was a movie called The Poseidon Adventure, where they had a ship which was sinking, and it's a disaster movie. It's all about the ship sinking, but the ship in that movie was called Poseidon. That's why they called the movie The Poseidon Adventure. So anyway, Poseidon was the god of the sea, and he looks like quite a fearsome god.